Doubtful it stood, as two spent swimmers that do cling together and choke their art. What does that even mean? Hi, my name is Moana, and this is my dog Spike, and this is my second booktube video. Yay! Hey Spikey, say yay! Spikey doesn't seem very thrilled. That's okay. He likes to just sit around and be quiet as I read together with him. I've always loved reading and writing, but I absolutely hated English class, both as a student and as a teacher. And here on my YouTube channel, I am now documenting my own journey of rediscovering my love for words. And so today I want to start off by talking about William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Okay, so today I went to my community public library and I picked up the No Fear Shakespeare version of Macbeth. And so if you look inside, it has, I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, it has like the original Shakespeare words and then the translation on the right. And so I'm going to try to stick to reading mostly, I'm definitely going to be reading the original Shakespeare words, but I'm hoping that I can understand what's going on in the story without having to read the modern day translation. I guess we'll see. William Shakespeare is considered one of the greatest playwrights in history, and if you're like me, you probably had to read at least one of his works in school. And so he's usually part of the required reading because people believe that his works allow students to explore universal themes like love, betrayal, ambition, and justice. And so these ideas are thought to be relatable to students of all ages. And so because these themes are relatable, it's thought that his works should allow students to develop their critical thinking skills as well as a deeper understanding of human nature. So the hope is that you read these works and then you have great discussions, understanding basically how people are. However, as most of us know, Shakespeare's style of writing, is very unique, and it's not something that we're really used to in our current modern day way of speaking. And so when I was in high school, my entire class was required to read Romeo and Juliet. And I remember spending most of my time feeling really confused and having to guess what was going on, and trying to guess what all the characters were trying to say. And after we read the play, we watched the modern day version of the play starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. And it did kind of help me to understand better exactly what was going on in the story, but the language was still so confusing to me that I felt like I couldn't even get to the point where I could even think about these themes that Shakespeare was trying to get us to understand. I remember my teacher trying to explain to us the difference between love and lust, and that's exactly what the story is supposed to be about. So in the beginning of the play, Romeo is in love with a woman named Rosalind, but he takes one look at Juliet at a party and he's never met her yet. It's just one look, and then he decides that he is completely head over heels in love with her. And so my teacher tried to engage us in a dialogue, in a discussion to decide whether or not Romeo is truly in love or if he's just experiencing lust. And we were all so lost in the language that we really couldn't even say anything, and pretty much the discussion just went nowhere. Years later, as a middle school English teacher, my students were required to read A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it's supposed to be a light and entertaining comedy, but it was clear that my students had no idea what was going on, and they didn't find anything funny about the play, and I'm pretty sure it was mainly because they were probably lost in the confusing language. And so now, as an adult who is hopefully older and wiser, I'm trying to recreate a similar experience for myself, and I'm going to be reading a Shakespeare play for the very first time, and so I chose Macbeth. This No Fear Shakespeare version of Macbeth, it does start off with a list of characters, and it explains who is who. There it is. But otherwise, other than that, there's no other background or context. I have no idea when or where this story takes place. It just jumps straight into the script. And to be honest, reading a little bit into it, I'm already lost.
Mikey.
So I have a confession to make. I just finished reading Act 1, and I started off reading just the Shakespeare version, the original version, and it was so frustrating and confusing that I eventually just gave up, and I've only been reading the translated modern day English version, which is so much better. When I tried just reading the Shakespeare text, I had no idea what was going on, and I was just getting angry and upset and couldn't really understand what was happening in the story, so I give up. Shakespeare's plays are exactly that. They're plays and they're scripts. They're not novels, so he doesn't set the scene for us and explain to us when and where the story takes place like they do in regular books and regular novels. And so it's kind of difficult to understand exactly what is taking place here, but from what I gathered, Macbeth seems to be a ruler slash warrior, and he meets several witches. It looks like there are 3 witches in this story who reveal to him out of mischief that they believe that he is going to end up becoming king one day. And so in order to do so, he ends up having to come up with this plan to murder the current king so that he can take over his throne. And when he reveals what the witches said to his wife, Lady Macbeth gets really excited. According to the character analysis at the beginning of the book, she's very hungry for power. It says that she's a very deeply ambitious woman who lusts for power and position. And so she gets really excited about the revelation from the witches, and she concocts this whole scheme together with Macbeth to murder the king, whose name is Duncan. I think if I had stuck to reading only the original Shakespeare text, I would have completely missed the entire point of this story. And so I really appreciate that there are books like this nowadays, like this No Fear Shakespeare series. This didn't exist when I was in high school. And so I had to read all the original texts, like when I read Romeo and Juliet. And so because now I'm only reading the modern day version, I feel like I'm getting an idea of what exactly is happening without looking up any of the background first. As you know, so this was actually created by the Spark Notes company, and they have a website where they explain a lot of classic literature further in detail, and I'm pretty sure I can find a lot more information on the context of the story there, but I didn't look anything up. I just dived straight into reading this book. And then so far I'm already getting a sense of this idea of understanding the difference between good and evil. Yeah, it's actually becoming a pretty exciting story, because originally it seems like when Macbeth heard that he had to commit this act of evil, of murder, in order to take over the throne, he was really excited and ready to do it. But now we're starting to see that his conscience is getting to the best of him, and he's wavering. But his wife, Lady Macbeth, she's actually the one who's really trying to convince him that they have to go through this heinous act of murdering King Duncan so that they can take over his throne and gain all his power. So I finished reading Macbeth, and it was actually a pretty quick read where I was able to read it in less than 24 hours. But like I shared earlier, I started off trying to read only the original Shakespeare text, but it was so difficult to understand, and I got so lost in the unfamiliar language that I ended up reading only the modern translated version. And when I look back, when I was an 8th grade English teacher, at that time, Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream was part of our school's required curriculum. And I forced my students to read the Shakespeare text only, because that's what I was told that I had to do. And now I feel really bad, because I'm pretty sure that my students must have been lost and confused the whole entire time. Unfortunately, I think the majority of the students that I was teaching were already reading under their grade level. And so you have that. And then on top of that, most of them didn't even enjoy reading anyway. And so being forced to read something as confusing as Shakespeare, I mean, I hope it wasn't a traumatizing experience for them. Maybe it's something that, they just had to get themselves through in school, and then they just forgot about it and moved on. Maybe that's best case scenario. I don't know. I'm not really naive enough to hope that they actually gained something wonderful out of it. I don't know. Maybe they did, and maybe maybe I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt, but yeah, I just feel kind of guilty now. So when I tried to read the original Shakespeare text, I felt like I had to spend so much of my brain power just trying to guess and figure out what Shakespeare was trying to say. And I was never really sure if I was actually getting it. So I don't feel bad at all that I switched to the modern day version. And in my classroom, even though our students, they did have both texts, the side-by-side version, just like I was reading just now, we forced them to read the classic Shakespeare version. And so, yeah, to be honest, I really can't be sure if they actually understood what was happening. And even when we checked for comprehension, it was pretty obvious now looking back that they were just lost. This is a little off topic, but whenever my students had to do research papers, they would go straight into Google and type in their research question. And I would constantly scold them because you know how normally you type in a question into Google and then it gives you a list of websites that could possibly provide you with resources to answer your question. And they would, instead of going into those websites, they would just take whatever text, like preview text that they would see, and they would just put that into their research paper. And I would scold them, that's not what you're supposed to do. But I did ask Google a question about why are students required to read original Shakespeare texts nowadays? What is the value in that? And oh my gosh, Google AI is amazing. It gave me all this information. And so according to Google AI, reading the original Shakespeare text instead of modern translations allows you to experience the full richness and complexity of his language, including the nuances of meaning, poetic imagery, and wordplay that can be lost in translation, providing a deeper understanding of his writing and the historical context of the time, while also engaging with the unique linguistic artistry he employed to craft his plays. Essentially, it lets you taste the original flavor of Shakespeare's work rather than a diluted version. So this does make sense, and I understand what it's trying to say because even in Macbeth, there was a lot of wordplay, and especially towards the end, you find out that in the story, it's such an important part of the story where Macbeth's downfall comes because he believes these three witches who gives him a prophecy, but actually it's a play on words, the prophecy that they give him, and that's what leads to his downfall. Well, that's part of what leads to his downfall. And so I get it. However, when you're in middle school and in high school, I don't really know if you're at the intellectual capabilities to be able to understand exactly what Shakespeare is trying to convey through his plays. I'm not trying to dumb anybody down or say that middle school and high school students aren't capable of understanding Shakespeare, but based on what I saw from my middle school students that I was teaching, as well as my own experience reading it in high school and today, I really find it difficult to argue that the struggle is worth what can be gained out of reading these texts. I think the actual play and the themes were wonderful, and that was something that I could only grasp by reading the modern day translation. So to me, it's okay for students to be required to read Shakespeare, but I think that they should be given the opportunity to probably read the modern day translation over the original Shakespeare text. So here's a really great example. I thought that this was a really significant line from the play. In Act 3, Scene 2, Lady Macbeth says, "Naught's had, all's spent, where desire is got without content. 'Tis safer to be that which we destroy, than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy." And in the modern day translation, it says, "If you get what you want and you're still not happy, you've spent everything and gained nothing. It's better to be the person who gets murdered than to be the killer and be tormented with anxiety." And to me, I don't really see how this modern day translation was extracted from the original Shakespeare text. I never would have been able to figure out that that's what it means all on my own. But moving past the language, I actually really enjoyed reading Macbeth, and I think it's something that everybody should get an opportunity to read because not only was it really entertaining and enjoyable, I think that it's true what people say that Shakespeare was so adept at capturing human nature and so many of these themes that we can relate to in all of his writing. And so Macbeth is a really great example of, I think, maybe that we all inherently possess good and evil, but it's up to us to decide which side of us are we going to listen to. And if there is something that we can gain by committing acts of evil, would we choose to do it? Macbeth, who's a Scottish general, he encounters three witches who are actually naughty witches, and they tell him this prophecy explaining to him that he's destined to become king. But he doesn't realize that they're actually fooling him, and it's he's going to find out later at the end of the story that it's actually a play on words. And what they're telling him is actually going to lead him towards his downfall rather than him leading a life that maybe he's always dreamed about. But he doesn't realize that at the beginning. So he goes home and shares with his wife, Lady Macbeth, that he's destined to become king. And she gets all excited because she lusts for power. And so she encourages him to commit murderous acts, such as killing the current king so that he can take over his throne. And so Macbeth does so, but eventually the guilt gets to him and he realizes that there are other people around him that suspect that he did something bad in order to gain his power. And he starts to become paranoid, thinking that these people are going to attack him, which leads to more acts of murder. And this story was actually pretty violent now that I think about it. I didn't read it in high school. Obviously, I'm an adult and I read it just now. But some of my classmates did, and I'm pretty surprised that this would be considered appropriate because it seems kind of like a bloody story, to be honest. Just doing a quick YouTube search, I saw that there are several movies of Macbeth that are available for free on YouTube. And I was thinking about watching the movie and then including a review of that in this video, but I don't know, I'm kind of not really in the mood for any kind of bloody violence right now. So I think I'm going to table that for a future video. To me, though, what was so interesting about this story was that it talked a lot about the guilt that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth experiences after what they did. And just like that line that I shared earlier, it seems like Lady Macbeth is starting to realize that it's not worth committing evil acts if it doesn't lead you towards happiness. Instead, it would have been more worthwhile to be the one being killed rather than the one killing if you're not going to become happy. I used to watch some true crime documentaries and podcasts, and I always used to wonder, like, when you get to the point where the person is caught and convicted and they're being sentenced in the courtroom, and then they have to address the judge and the victim's family and give some sort of statement of apology. I always wonder, are these people really sorry? Because sometimes I think that if you're capable of committing like a murderous act, doesn't that mean that you're someone who is like, you don't feel bad, and that's the reason why you're able to do this type of evil deed? Maybe that person is someone who just doesn't see how murder is a really bad thing. And so reading Macbeth, like he committed murder because he really wanted power, but later on he did feel guilty. And so I guess it makes you really think about human nature. Like, are some people able to kill without feeling bad? Or does everybody have some sort of conscience inside themselves that tell them that this is wrong, but maybe something else takes over and, during their act of killing, which leads them to do something that they know is wrong anyway? When a person kills another person, do they actually end up feeling bad and feeling guilty afterwards? Or are there people out there who don't feel guilty at all? So what do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So even though it was difficult to read the original Shakespeare text, I really did enjoy reading the modern English translated version. And I do recommend Macbeth to anybody who wants to read a story that really makes them think a lot, I think, about the nature of human beings. It kind of is a dark story, just a word of warning. And I feel like there's so much more to touch upon, but I kind of hesitated because this is my first analysis that I'm posting here on YouTube. And I wasn't sure how much of the story that I can spoil for everyone. I feel like there is so much more that we could talk about. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start a YouTube channel was because I wanted the opportunity to be able to discuss with other people all these great novels that I was reading. But really, I didn't want to spoil it at the same time. So let me know. I would love to hear some feedback in the comments. What do you think? Would you like me to explain further what my thoughts are? And do you have more thoughts that you want to share with me on Macbeth? Do you want me to also explain further details, how the story ends? That'll give me a better idea of what I should do for future videos. I think for my next video, I'm gonna switch to something a little bit lighter and more pleasant, since Macbeth was a bit dark and bloody and murderous. So I want to read something a little bit more fun and light and happy. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on that video. And with that, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any suggestions for me, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts either on Macbeth or maybe what else you think that I should do on my channel. So excited to be part of this BookTube community, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon. Bye!